So there could be a range of different goals and objectives for any landowner. Some may be more timber-centric, meaning that they're looking to yield some sort of financial value from managing their forest. Others, in many cases, just want something that's aesthetically pleasing. And some others still are looking to manage for wildlife. And oftentimes, though not always, that usually includes game species, or sometimes what we call our bullet species. Our deer, our bear, our turkey, they tend to respond pretty dramatically to forage availability. And in this case, we kind of have two contrasting food provisional options represented here in this woodlot. Standing next to a service berry, which would produce soft mast, which means it's sort of a fleshy fruit that a certain number of wildlife species are going to prefer. What's unique about the oak hickory forest cover type that dominates much of Virginia and much of the eastern U.S. altogether is that we produce a lot of hard mast with those species. Our hickories and our oaks produce what's called hard mast, a hard nut. Our oaks, of all the hard mast producing species, are somewhat unique. So if we think of our hard mast species, we think about walnut, think about hickory, think about beech, and we think about oaks. Now what's unique about oaks among those species is that it doesn't have a husk around that seed, around that acorn. And what that ultimately means is that now that food source is more widely available to a broader array of species that can gain access to what we call that nut meat, what they're really after within that acorn. That broader availability means that acorns are sort of a unique or keystone food source for a broader array of wildlife species. And in fact, you can actually find that wildlife populations will migrate throughout forested areas in response to where that hard mast is being produced in larger quantities. So in this case, promoting an array of different species that are capable of producing an array of different foods, be it hard or soft mast, generally tends to be associated with a greater increase in the population of megafauna, or those charismatic species that we all like to see in our woodlots. So I'm standing next to a white oak, which is actually interspersed and mixed along with a number of red oak species, so our scarlets and our northern red oaks. They both produce acorns, but they do so differently. So the white oak takes one growing season to produce its acorns, whereas the red oaks take 2 growing seasons. Oaks in general, and this is true of red and white oaks, are sort of fickle in their production of acorns. They have what can be relatively short periods or relatively long periods of time that elapse before they produce what we call bumper crops, just a ton of acorns in a single season. By diversifying the number of oak species we have out there, we're more likely to capture a reliable food source for the wildlife species that we're looking to support.